Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. My guest this go around is Scott Longert. He's first and foremost obsessed with baseball. He's written several books that chronicle the lives and times of baseball players to give folks today the sense of what people were like in the early 1900s. For that matter, he gives a sense of what America was like and how baseball impacted all of it. Scott marries his love of baseball with that of history and tries to remind us where we come from so that maybe we can anticipate what we have with us, the things that are around us, what we can appreciate, maybe just a little bit more. So please share this with a friend and help us grow. And I hope you enjoy this chat with Scott. Scott Longert, thank you for joining me on the Why Am I podcast today.
Oh, thanks, Greg. It's terrific to be here.
I love it when people are excited at first, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is going to be so great. We'll see if I can get you.
Oh,
All
sure.
right. So the scenario in which we find ourselves is we're coming up on spring. It's going to be a crisp day. We're going to be standing in line for a ball game, I assume. And there's a pretty good lineup, so we're having a conversation, and I talk about me for a second, and I kind of exhaust that because I don't really have that much going on. And then it's your turn to reciprocate, Scott. So who are you, bud?
Sure. Yeah. Now I'm looking forward to opening day is really what it's all about. You know, I follow the preseason and the exhibition games. I was reading this morning on what the Guardians did yesterday, and but it really all comes down to that opening day, whether it's 40 degrees or 59 degrees, whatever in Cleveland, and standing in line and just the anticipation of seeing the new team coming out there for the first time and what they can do and what kind of start they can get off to and all the sights and everything. It's something really special. I've been going to opening day. I probably won't make it this year, but I think my first opening day I was about 7. So we're talking about 60 years, unfortunately, but good, I suppose. Yeah, seeing the Indians and the Guardians, and seeing hopefully what a good preview of what the season's going to be. That's always the exciting thing for me, just the anticipation and seeing them out there for the first time and seeing how they look and the start they can get off to. So that's been something that's been with me ever since a child. That's never gotten old. It's just really a great environment, a great atmosphere. When you step out and you see the outfield grass for the first time for the year, it's really memorable to me. It still is, and it'll be memorable this year too.
That's funny. So what's the feeling you get with the build up to opening day? Do you get kind of excited? Like when the weather starts turning, I just get spring fever, period. Like I just sort of, I don't know, it just kind of gets me excited, but I guess that you sort of get that experience just for baseball, huh?
Yeah, it to me it's the most exciting time of the year when we get to late March and early April, and it's time to begin the season. I mean, you can talk all winter long about baseball and what the teams are going to do and read all the stats and what all the analysts have to say, but it comes down to when they first take the field, and you just a lot of thinking about it and some anxiety or getting eager to see what the team's going to be like. But there's nothing like the actual start of the season, even though you ramp it up really from October on all the way through free agency and signing guys to long-term deals and the trades that are made and guys that are let go. I mean, there's a lot of activity in the winter, but it all comes down to seeing them take the field. To me, that's just the most exciting thing when the guys run out there and it's time to play ball for real. That's just fantastic.
Does it make you a little emotional in those moments?
It does. Yeah, it really does. I mean, there's something about the game. I think because to me, it's the most fun game to play because you just can get a couple of guys, 3 or 4, and throw a ball around. If you get enough, you can play a game. You can do baseball all the time. Sure, you can do football and basketball, but baseball to me has always been the most exciting, the most challenging. You get a chance to hit, you get a chance to field. You're definitely going to be part of the game no matter what happens. It's just to me a great game and something so much fun to watch and to play. No, you can play the game yourself, not nearly as well as the pros do, but you can play and you can have a lot of fun doing it. And today there's so many different leagues going on, and for all different levels. I mean, guys approached me over the winter about playing in an over 65 league. And for a little while, it intrigued me thinking about, then I realized you've had a knee replacement, your other knee's falling apart. I mean, you really want to go out there and kill yourself. So I really was interested, but I had to say no for my own safety. But I was really a part of me wanted to go out and play again. It's been about 20 years since I played competitively, but part of me still wants to play. I mean, there's an urge to want to go out there and do it where I know I can't physically, but it's still there. It'll probably be with me till all the way to the end. Like, I wish I could go out and take in a bat and try and run the bases. That would, but it never leaves. I don't think it ever diminishes.
That's so funny. So it sounds like you were born into baseball then. Age 7, your first game.
Yeah, I was actually. I've told this story a number of times to people when I do some talks and things that helped learn how to read when I was 5 years old by looking at the box scores in the morning paper. I got to recognize the names with how I heard them on the radio, like Colavito and Bell and Pearsall, and I was able to recognize them and then learn the numbers, figure what they meant. Like, it's the first number meant how many times they were at bat. The next was if they scored a run. The next, and then I figured out the numbers, so I was able to start reading by the box score. I could go down there in the morning, put the paper on the floor, and look and see Colavito. I recognize the name. 1 for 2 with one RBI. I think he might have hit a home run. I couldn't go that far to figure that out, but that's what got me to learn reading, because I wanted to read all the summaries about the Indians and all the other teams. So that got me going into reading. So since 5, actually, I've been kind of addicted to it, and I still am.
So I'm guessing this is a family endeavor, right? Because 5-year-olds don't generally find themselves into baseball on their own, right?
Yeah, definitely. My grandpa played semi-pro ball in Cleveland, and he was left-handed and I'm left-handed, so I kind of patterned myself after him. He usually every Friday night I would always get shipped off to my grandparents' house, but he'd have the game on in the summer with his neighbor who would come over, and they both are elderly gentlemen, but they listened religiously to the game. And so I would be with them. I would be all of 4 or 5 or 6, and I would take in everything they said and listen. And it was just part of part of every summer was going over to Grandpa's on Friday night to listen to the Indians game. Of course, when they went on the road, I couldn't listen to the games out of California at 11. I was long asleep, but I really cherished those times. We'd sit at the table and just listen to the game, and they would talk strategy, and I'd try and soak it up and figure out what they were talking about and who was doing well and who wasn't. So I've been, just a little guy in kindergarten, I was just heavily involved in the game.
That seems like such a different experience than we have now today, right? Like, because whatever I think of sports today, it's like you're always watching on TV, and it's just constant movement. People are always talking, but it sounds like if you're listening on the radio, I mean, it's a very different relationship you have with, and it sounds like you guys had a lot of discourse during it, right? Like, so you're just talking the entire time along with the game.
Yeah, well, to me, radio was fabulous. I mean, they did televise. I think they would televise weekend games. If the Indians were home, I think the Saturday and Sunday games would be on TV to watch. And there only was a few channels. I don't know which channel had them, but your main source was radio. And we had good announcers. We had Jimmy Dudley and Bob Neal, and then later Herb Score, Joe Tate, and others. And now we have Tom Hamilton. But these guys were able to really give you a visual picture of what was going on. I mean, I could see it in my head, and they would say, he's rounding first. I could just see it I just felt I was there. And it was just really exciting to listen to radio. When we got older, I was around 9 or 10, I would make sure I had a transistor radio. And then, well, my parents are gone, so they wouldn't know. But I would take the transistor to bed with me at 9 o'clock at night or 9:30, have an earphone, and I knew the pregame would start at 10. And I put on, I'd stay awake. I put in the earphone, I have the transistor. I listen to the game from Los Angeles when I'm playing the Angels, and I probably would fall asleep around midnight or 12:30. But I would listen to those games, and then no one ever knew. But some of my friends did the same thing. But it's like I couldn't go to sleep knowing I had a chance to listen to the game, and I would do that, and nobody was the wiser other, and we go to school the next day, and then we talk about who stayed up the latest. Like, I heard the sixth inning. Oh yeah, well, I heard the seventh. Well, what happened then? And then they would tell you, and that was a much different time, I guess. Your frame of reference is much different, but that to me was the greatest thing. And I'll just curl up with the transistor in bed, just this little 9-volt thing. Which the station at night, the smaller stations would clear out, so you get a really great signal from whoever was brought with WHK here in Cleveland, or I'm not sure who it was, or WTAM, but you could really hear well, and which to me was so exciting to do. Where today you can watch any game you want on MLB or the subscription. You can, so there's no real I guess you don't have to work that hard to see a ball game. It's kind of like now, oh, I'll watch this one, I'll watch that one. Then it was like, oh my gosh, I can listen to a game, or the game's going to be on TV this Saturday. Those were exciting things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nowadays it really feels like we're spoiled for choice, whereas back then, if you only got something every so often, it was something special, right? That you would kind of hold in a certain reverence, it sounds like.
It was. And there also, I believe, was the game of the week. So you could see, usually it was the Yankees, but you could see two other teams once a week, which, was like the only other time you could do that was the World Series. And the World Series was usually, most of the games were in the afternoon. So they would start at 2 or 2:30. So you would, in elementary school, as soon as the bell rang, you'd dash out the door and run home as far, wherever you live, to catch part of the game. So it was like a privilege to see the Dodgers play the Twins, or the Yankees play the Dodgers, or the Giants, or the game of the week. You might get to see Pittsburgh. You might get to see Roberto Clemente like once a month, but you get to see him, and Ernie Banks and guys you get to see Mantle and Maris and Harmon Killebrew, guys around the league like that. It was, you just didn't get a chance. You hear about him and read about him, but then maybe once a week or once every few weeks, you get to see him in action. It was just really a thrill to see Sandy Koufax pitch, or Don Drysdale. I mean, that was like unbelievable. Like, did you see him? Yeah, I saw him. Oh, it was amazing. You just see him like today. You could see him you could see whoever you want, almost virtually every game, which is great and it's terrific. But then it was really special because you had to wait and only maybe see him once a month, or even not even that much. But that then was just such a cool thing. It's great to see these other players and the skills they had that you could only read about.
That's so cool. Do you think you get even close to excited nowadays as you used to as a kid?
Maybe not but I still get excited. I mean, my heart still, when the Indians or the Guardians, I should say, I'm still working on that. When the Guardians get in the playoffs, I get it very excited. And especially when they got past the first round, they're playing the Yankees. I was really into that. Just really wanted them to beat the Yankees. I don't have anything really against the Yankees, but we've had a rivalry that goes way, way back. The things have happened over the years. There's been a lot of fights and taunting. And in the old days, people would throw vegetables at the players, or lemons from the seats, or throw hot dogs at the guys. And it was very, very intense with the Yankees for a long, long time. And now it's not quite as what it was, but I enjoy, I really wanted to see the Guardians win, and they came close. I thought that they might take them, and this year we'll see how that goes. But that gets me pretty revved up when it's the Indians, the Guardians again. There we go, the Guardians and the Yankees going at it head to head for a shot at the American League Finals, and winning a pennant. That to me is still very exciting to watch. Where I ignore the dog. If he wants to go out, he's in trouble, because I'm not gonna risk 5 minutes and missing something. So during playoff time, he has to just wait and be patient.
How important do you think rivalry is to sports? I've always sort of, I don't know, like I just don't get that worked up about like an opponent, like enough to like viscerally dislike them in any way. Sometimes there's individuals that are just, jerks, and it's like, I get that, but like a whole person. But it seems like people love a good rivalry. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's excellent, because it gets you more excited at first about the game. You have more at stake because you want to win the rivalry games, and you want to do what you have to do. And there's always some players on the other team that you want to see. You want to see them go 0 for 4, or you want to knock the pitcher out of the box early, because they're some of the best, and you want your guys to be able to do it. And I think that really makes it much more fun to watch when it's when you want to beat the Yankees. I mean, it goes way back. It also goes back to like the Steinbrenner years, because George was a Clevelander, and so of course owning the Yankees, we wanted to beat him every time, and he wanted to beat us because he wanted to show up all his friends in Cleveland, and he didn't want his team ever to lose. I guess he'd have his epic tantrums if we took a doubleheader or took a series 3 games out of 4. He would lose it in the clubhouse and scream at everybody. But we wanted that to happen because it was just kind of like, hey, this is a Cleveland guy, but he's with the Yankees, so we don't want him to be successful when they're in our town. It's our town, and we're going to protect our turf. I think that goes well. And even in football, the Browns and the Steelers, it's still, you always want to see the Browns beat the Steelers. Even if we have a losing record, if we beat the Steelers at the end of the year, it gives you a good feeling. It's just always been that way. Growing up, we don't want the Steelers to win, and we want to beat the Yankees. And it's all. I mean, it's neat when Cincinnati comes to town for a kind of the home state thing, but it doesn't mean as much. But I think rivalry, there still is something to rivalry. I think there's something about beating those guys and gives you some satisfaction, whether if you're not winning the pennant or you're in 5th place, but you beat your rival, it makes it go down a bit easier.
I think it's probably like our tribalism, right? Like us as humans, we like to find our tribe, our commonality, and then we rally. It seems like as soon as you figure out who your tribe is, step 2 is to figure out who your enemy is, and then you gotta root against them.
Yeah, it makes for a nice atmosphere, like at home when everybody's on the same page. It's really nice that because always, you always will have it at Cleveland Stadium. When we ever play Toronto, you'll get a lot of fans come down from Toronto, or they'll come from Detroit. But for the New York games, it's usually pretty much a Cleveland crowd, and it makes you feel good with everyone there is seems a little extra friendly, and slap your hand or and just cheer with you. It's nice. It really is.
So did you play all through your childhood? It sounds like you said up to 20 years ago. So, I mean, you've been playing a while.
I went as far as I could up and I got to high school and could not hit a curveball. So that kind of did me in at playing at the high school. But then I switched to softball, which is, it's not the same as hardball, but it's fun and it keeps you active. So I played softball until I couldn't anymore, until I was about 47 or 48 when my left knee had some major trouble. I had to have the knee replaced, and that put an end to the career. But I played from little league through then. So I always look forward to playing ball, no matter what was happening around. And when I'm a married guy and have responsibilities, I still made some time to play softball and excuse me, get out there on the baseball field. There's nothing like it to compete. Even it's fun, and it the guys you're playing and all that, but still you want to win and you want to do well and practice once maybe during the week or twice, and then play ball on Sundays and see how it goes. Which is I was reluctant to give it up, and I said earlier that the part of me still wants to play. I know I can't, but I really wish there was I could wave a magic wand and have youth for 4 hours. I could just go out and play a doubleheader. Then I say, okay, that's it. I'm good. I'm good for the rest of my days. But it's a game that's always stuck with me. And I love football. I love baseball. I mean, basketball, but baseball's always been it for me.
Gotcha. So multi-sport person all the way through high school. And then at some point you got interested in history. When did that come about?
I was always interested in American history through junior high and high school, taking American history classes. So I noticed a lot of my fellow students were not interested at all, but I was very interested. So when I got to college, I delved more into American history and decided that's something that I wanted to study. I didn't per se want to teach, but I thought about writing. That would be very helpful with writing, because I've always wanted to write. And so I took American history courses, and then after Ohio State, I decided to enroll at Cleveland State to get my MA in American history post Civil War up to the Depression years. And I've been fascinated by history. I still am, to learn about how people lived and what was appropriate in their time and what was important, and all the differences we have from then and today. To me, it's fascinating. Doing research, I still do research now. Just love to go back and check out old newspapers and see what the headlines were and what was very important then, and looking at all different aspects of our American history. So I've been really it's been my favorite thing, and something that I've hopefully have some ability to kind of transpose to people when they read my things, and give them a pretty good idea of what, if you were alive in 1920, what you might have seen, what you might have experienced. To me, I think it's important to know all those things, and I think it helps you in your day-to-day life, knowing what was good and what was bad, and it's I think it's pretty true. You learn from history, and not to repeat what's been done, and move forward and do things in a good proper manner.
Hmm. What do you think about it? Like doing all the research, is it the discovery of something you just didn't know, or maybe the discovery of something that people have forgotten? Like, what do you think really attracts you to that?
I think both of those things really. To learn about how people live, to me, is fascinating. To find all the nuances, where like in ball players, they lived in rooming houses, but where were they? What type of a house were they? How many people lived there? How much they paid for room and board, and how it was done. The old ballparks, how they were constructed, and just in general. You go back to World War I or World War II, and see what was written in the newspapers and letters that people wrote back and forth to their husbands or their brothers or fathers overseas, and back and forth, and the state of people's minds at the time, how much they worried, and what they were concerned about. Those kind of things, to me, I think are the best I like to discover. Looking at going to probate and looking at people's wills, the possessions they had, what was
Hmm.
important to them, the houses they lived in, and the cars they drove, what were those things, the places that they worked at. Just to me, it's just incredibly interesting to see how these things transpire, and how a normal regular person who worked 9 to 5, how they live, how they raise their children, and their education, and those things, to me, are fascinating. I like to learn as much as I can about people, and about the life and deaths of people, how they what they accomplished during their life, and when they came to an end, and what was said and what was done about them, looking at people's obituaries from many years ago, and the funerals that they might have, just gives you an idea of what their status was, and how people cared about them. And of course, reading editorials in the papers, what the editors had in mind about current events, about the politics, and city politics, and who was elected and who wasn't, and what their criteria was. To me, it's fascinating. I'm just looking at those things.
Interesting. So it sounds like I was going to guess what your favorite time period was. I'm going to say it's probably around 1910 to 1930s, right around in there.
That's pretty right. That's right there. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I go back a little bit further, maybe about to 1900, but yeah, that's my favorite time period. It really is. I just think life was really interesting then, and so many new things were coming to people. They were getting motion pictures, silent pictures, and radio would be coming in the early 20s. Cars would be getting much more
Yeah.
accessible with Henry Ford in the assembly line, and how people would adapt to those things, and incorporate them into their lives. How you take everyone to the movies. You'd buy your first radio, and everyone would sit around the radio and the programs that were available, and baseball and broadcasting. When they started broadcasting games in the 1920s, how important that was to people to be able to actually, if they can't get to the ballpark, to listen to a ball game, especially for people that were, at the time, they were called invalids, people that were older, or people that were in wheelchairs or couldn't get to the ballpark. This was the greatest thing in the world for them. They could actually listen to the play-by-play on radio. That This was extremely helpful. And it was, a typical scene would be at your home. You'd run home from school, the game would be on, and mom would be outside hanging out the wash, and there'd be about radios in most of the houses. You just step outside, you could hear the game. Wherever you walk, you could hear the game, because everybody had them on the radio. Kids would gather outside to listen, and if your team got to the World Series, your school might be into it, and they would bring a radio and let everyone listen to the game from 2 o'clock on, and those things. And it was just incredible with the newspapers, or large companies like in the department stores downtown, they would put up electronic scoreboards, and you could just gather there, and they would change the score every half inning. And you would have crowds sometimes of 10,000 people standing, like in downtown Cleveland, to watch the scoreboard for the 1920 series. Didn't get tickets. I think that's just really great, and the excitement that people had, celebrating in the streets, and all. So all those things really appeal to me. And all the individual businesses, where today we have all our department stores and things, but then it was all mom and pop stores, and clothing stores, and cigar cigar stores and dry goods stores, things like that. Who right on your corner of your street, you'd probably have a pharmacy that you could go to. So those things are what really interest me, and I like to learn about them, and I still do that today.
Yeah, I have a very romantic image of what kind of like the 20s or the 10s or even like the 50s, what it would be like to kind of be alive
Yeah,
and walking around in those time periods.
yeah.
I would say nostalgic, but I wasn't alive in those time periods, but it's kind of like just this romantic idea of like, I would love to transport in a time machine, even for a day, just to walk around and just kind of feel what it would be like to be alive in that time period, what people were like, how they related to each other, all that stuff. It endlessly fascinates me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was just a wonderful time, really. A lot of growth in America and people moving forward, more people going to college and more professions becoming available. And there were many villains then too. I mean, there were
Hmm.
some bad folks then who committed all kinds of crimes and embezzled from people and swindled people. That was going on. Of course, the very very wealthy would really they would kind of live in a vacuum. They'd have these giant mansions with servants and gardeners and cooks, and they wouldn't associate with people under their social class. And there would be high society articles in the newspaper about who was at the opera and who was at the benefit, where the regular person couldn't go or couldn't be seen with these people. It was just understood you're not in my class, so you can't I can't mingle with you. And that was something which wasn't pleasant, but I think it was very interesting to read about that, how people had this attitude, and the women in the women's pages, how some dressed like all their clothes came right from New York, and they would get their picture in the papers just because they were going to some benefit to raise money for something, which the well-to-do usually would do, and you would see your name in the society page quite a bit. That's like who it was important to say whose name was always in there. Or regular folks didn't have a chance to do anything like that. They would just read about it and envy these people. It was something that was super important with the Gilded Age after the Civil War, the early part of the 20th century, where people had opportunity to make millions and millions of dollars in the railroads and the oil business and shipping. And you could rise up from next to nothing. If you were aggressive enough and smart enough, you could wind up being the head of an oil company, or you could rise to the top like a Rockefeller or a Vanderbilt, people like that who didn't have the old money. They were able to prosper in that time. And it's interesting to see their growth, how they accomplished these things and got themselves the $1 million mansions and made the trips to Europe every year and had the summer homes. So that's not doesn't quite happen today as much. I know there are some, of course, that are, but back then it was quite a thing to have your summer home in Newport Beach in Rhode Island or somewhere in upstate New York and summer there, spend the whole summer there, then go back to your mansion during the winter. It was quite a different time, but no, very, very interesting.
Mm. So was that roughly the time period that your grandpa used to tell you stories about when you were a kid?
It's probably ingrained in me, yeah, because
Yeah.
I was kind of a change of life baby. I came along late, so my grandpa was in his late 70s, I think, when I was born. But he was born in about 1878 or 1880, I want to say. So his prime time, he was married and had his family in the early 1900s, and he had a grocery store, and he was a paper salesman and things. So he was really a very active guy. He bought a home in Cleveland Heights that was kind of a nice neighborhood. That's where I used to go when I went for babysitting when I was very young. And it was one of those houses that had a complete third floor and a basement. That was kind of like, they weren't any, but that was when you could have had a servant or someone living up on the third floor. That's how those houses were built. And I loved to go up there and play and then go down to the basement. And so I related to all those things and the stories that they told, about the first car they got. And they all came from Europe, stories about coming to America. Those things really were, I guess, were ingrained in me so young that it just naturally, as soon as I went to school and there was a book on Abraham Lincoln, I had to read it, or George Washington and the Civil War, or anything about John Rockefeller. I just had to, and then the more I read, the more interested I got, and it just got, I guess, sort of out of control, as you could say, is where that was my main focus, was learning our history. But yeah, I think it was my grandparents, being around in that time, I think really buoyed my interest when they would tell me about things.
It sounds like the idea of your connection to the radio, and then talking about when the radio came along and how much of a boon that was, and you were getting to kind of share in that history that with somebody who was there for it. I mean, That's crazy, to be able to have that kind of wealth of knowledge and experience and,
Yeah.
kind of walk a day in the life of somebody back then. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was, my grandpa saw a lot of games at League Park, but I was too young to even know who the players were to ask him about it. But he saw like Lajoie play and Elmer Flick and Ty Cobb, Addie Joss, people like that. He saw them all. He went there quite frequently to see the games. And what he could have told me about guys, he probably knew some of them because it was kind of like, they were regular guys. You could go say hi and talk to them and all. But he was at League Park and in all their glory years and probably 1920 for the first pennant World Series. But he passed away before I could really zero in on, did you know him and did you see him play and all of his, unfortunately. But I got the general thing about League Park, and it's interesting because when I started researching, some of the names were really familiar, and I wasn't sure why. When I was researching ball players from the teens, and geez, I've heard that name before. I kind of think my grandfather probably was talking about some of the guys then who were playing, and I guess because the name, like I couldn't figure it out, but I've seen this name before. He's not a great like Sam Crawford. Yeah, he was a great ball player, but how did I that name? It sounds familiar. He probably saw him play and talked about the Tigers, Cobb and Crawford and Bobby Veach and other guys like that. And New York, I'm sure he saw Ruth, and he probably saw Ruth pitch in the early days. And guys on the Red Sox with Carl Mays and some of the other pitchers, Dutch Leonard. So it was kind of neat to me when I was researching, and a couple, I see a name and go, I've seen that name. Where do I know it from? I'm guessing it came from this went in my head, but it stayed and stored there until I started actually. Smokey Joe Wood, guys like that.
So you definitely have a passion for history. You have a passion for baseball, and so you married the two into writing. So you started writing books about baseball. What made you choose to write about baseball? Like of all the things you could have written about, why that specifically?
I did a lot of thinking before I started writing about I want to write and what should I do. I considered a lot of areas. The Civil War, I studied a lot about that, the generals on both sides and the battles, and I thought about it. But then I thought that so much has been written about it by scholars, and you can't really. I don't think you could add all that much to it. What's been out there. I mean, you can always write about any battle or any, but I think a lot has been said about it, and I think what really in the back of my mind, what got me going was the book, The Glory of Their Times, that Larry Ritter wrote in probably about 1966 or 67. That's where he interviewed a number of ball players that played from the turn of the century through the 1920s. And that just really interested me. And I always thought about each guy has a paragraph here, or a chapter, or 5 or 6 or 7 pages. But I thought about what about trying to do something full length on some of these guys that they appear just reading 7 or 8 pages. They seem very interesting. What if I tried to write something about guys who lived back then in detail, study the newspapers, go to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown and look at the player files and check out the old Sporting News and Baseball Magazine. Maybe there's more than a paragraph on. So I started doing that. I started looking at guys like Joe Wood and Tris Speaker, and got me more and more interested. But what really hooked me was I started reading about Addie Joss, and that he had died at 31 of tubercular meningitis at the height of his career.
Hmm.
That's such a sad thing. What was it like? What happened? And the more I started researching and reading, I thought he had a very interesting life, and he accomplished so much in 31 years. And he was in the American story. He came from a very small town in Wisconsin. His dad died when he was young. He had to help support his mom, but he was gifted as a baseball player, and he played for his high school, and he made his way all the way up to the big leagues from Juneau, Wisconsin. How do you do that in 1900, 1901? And the more I researched and looked at the old papers about his exploits and what he did, I was fascinated. I thought, I think this is worth a book. So I worked on it for a number of years, and I was able to get a manuscript and lucky to get it published. And I thought, this is probably where I need to be. That people bought the book, people are interested in it. There's other people and other teams and things that's probably where my expertise lies and probably what I know the most. So that's how I got to that. I guess if the Joss book nobody had picked it up, I probably would have punted and probably gone back to post Civil War and looked for things around there. But luckily it did get published, and that spurred me on to keep going in that area and keep writing about baseball.
That's cool. So I've noticed most of your books are about Cleveland, right? And obviously born and raised there. You love that place. You went to college there. Do you think you could ever find yourself writing about other people and other interesting teams?
I think it's possible, but I guess I won't call it being I'm lazy, but resources. There's a lot of resources in Cleveland to write about Cleveland things. The public library here is fabulous. There's so much detail and information there, and they're extremely helpful. And a lot of national papers, things are on microfilm, so it's easy for me just to stay here. But I it's probably could write about other cities and other places because things are so accessible now online that you could do. In the old days, if I wanted to write about something in St. Louis, I'd have to go there and visit the libraries and historical societies and take notes there. And that was kind of difficult to do, but it's something that I could do. I mean, there's a lot of other teams I'm interested in and ball players and things around there that she's from Cleveland. There may have been a book written about her, I think, but her name was Mrs. Britton, and she, through her father, Frank Robeson, she inherited the St. Louis Cardinals in 1911. And she, I believe, was the first female owner of a major league team. Maybe that was something in the 1880s or something. But as far as the modern era, the National American League, she actually owned the team and was an active owner. Now, she was only in about 7 years or so, but she ran into a ton of adversity because being the only woman doing that, the men were not going to take her seriously. And I don't know about her ball players, if they would respect her or not. I don't know. But I thought that would be something for a story. You know, even though she was born and raised in Cleveland, but her career was in St. Louis and other kind of other people like that who kind of broke barriers and in different time areas in the area. So yeah, I'm not averse to doing that or trying to do that. But I know I've focused on Cleveland because it's been fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but I know what my resources are and I know how to access them, and that kind of kept me working from a Cleveland angle.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the rivalries, right?
No, probably nothing. Nothing to do with that at all. I have written a lot about the Yankees because all the times they would play Cleveland. So all my books, there's quite a bit of detail about the Yankees in there, about things that happened with Ruth and Gehrig and DiMaggio and others along the line. And in the 40s, the pennant race in 48, we were fighting the Yankees almost the whole year, and almost every game we played was crucial. So I've written a lot about New York as well, and the other American League cities. I've written a lot about Detroit and Chicago and Philadelphia at that time, the old A's, and St. Louis, and who am missing, Chicago or Boston. So I'm fairly familiar with those cities too by reading their interactions with Cleveland. I've learned a lot about those cities and their ball players too.
Hmm. And you've also written a children's book, right?
Yeah, I did write a children's book on Cy Young. That was a fun experience. I hadn't had any plans to do so, but my publisher approached me and they wanted to see if I'd be interested in writing a baseball book for children. And I thought, geez, I'd never written for children. I'm not sure. But I thought about it and worked out some ideas. And I thought that would be something good to do, and thought the best person I could think of was Cy Young. That he played a long, long time ago. It would be like a bit of a history lesson for children, but he was one of the all-time greats. And I think if you're a casual baseball fan, you know what the Cy Young Award is. You might know that he actually was a person that lived. So I thought, what about going into detail about Cy's life and seeing that? And when I did the research, I said, yeah, I think this is worthwhile for children. He was basically a farmer. That was his number one thing in life. He was a great pitcher, but he spent every waking moment working on his farm, taking care of his animals and plowing the fields. He lived right outside of Canton in a very small area called Paoli, which is a farm community. And he was just good old Cy who lived in the neighborhood. Then he would excuse himself for 4 or 5 months to play baseball and be the best pitcher at it. But he was just a regular guy. And I thought it'd be good to show kids how people live. They worked very hard. They went to school. They understood and respected the law. They lived exemplary lives, and I thought that would be a good lesson for children. So it worked out, and I was very happy with the results of it. Though I needed a lot of coaching and editorial wise about writing on a level for a 9 or 10-year-old. That was not the easiest thing to do because I'd have a tendency to use the big words and all of that, but a child's not going to understand that. So I had to I do some rewriting and things, but I think I got into the right mode after a while. I was able to accomplish what I wanted to, and I'm pleased with the results. And the funny thing is, a lot of adults read it because they just want to learn more about Cy Young, and they know it's a quick, easy read, but it gives all this basic details. You want to learn about the 1903 World Series, the first one, his perfect game that he pitched, how he jumped to. He left the National League and came to the American League, and how he lived later on, his later years and his views on things. So I do when I go to book fairs and things, I do sell a number of Cy Young books to adults, and I tell them, it's really meant for younger people, but you can learn a lot about Cy and his time period, and people will buy it just and read it as something they want to learn.
That's cool. That's cool. What do you think the most fulfilling part is for you about being an author? I'm always curious, like what motivates people to write a book, and then, I mean, I've talked to some people and they say, well, it's the research portion, and then some people say it's the sense of accomplishment once I've climbed that mountain. It's like, what do you think is your favorite part of it?
Well, probably all the glamour and excitement. I'm being facetious, but all the accolades you get to see your name.
Yeah.
I think the main reason I write is I'm hoping to educate people about a certain time in our lives, a certain time period that people can learn about things. I think that's the main reason I do it. To help people understand a little bit more about where they came from and what America was like in different times. And I think that's the main thing, because people will come to me and tell me, I didn't know this, or I learned this by reading your book. I didn't know that this had happened. And I try to give people a refresher course on some of the main things that happened, the stock market crash, World War I and World War II, the pandemic in 1919. We did have one, and people did die, and to try and educate people on those so they can learn about these things that they didn't know, and try and write in an easy conversational manner where it's not like you have to have a dictionary when you read my books, and it's like, I don't understand the words he's saying, but something people can understand and relate to. And so I think that's my main accomplishment, is to get it out there and see it in libraries, especially. I enjoy that when I know that libraries purchase the books and people take them out and they learn something. And then people will engage me in conversations now and then about, I read your book and I read about what you said about this, and don't you think about, and then have a conversation about, well, yeah, I think that was really true. And maybe I didn't give a complete picture of that, but I wanted you to get the basics about what had happened this particular event or this particular year, the presidential election, and why the local politics were important. So that to me is very gratifying when people come back to me and say they learned something, and there are some things they have questions about. That's I think the main reason I do it, to get so people have another resource if they want to learn about the past and how it was.
Well, if learning about that time in history and kind of understanding that better is really important, I mean, do you feel like that's something lost today, that people just don't take the time and energy to kind of research and stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of our history is lost, and people don't really get the background I think they should have about our history. And everybody has grandparents and great-grandparents, and I think we should know something about them and how they lived. I think that's important as far as family life and being a person. You should really know what struggles that they may have made, and what they had to do to give you the life that you have, and the things that they went through, and to show things that today you take a lot for granted. That, yeah, we've got everything. You just get up in the morning, look at your cell phone, go on your laptop, and catch up on everything, and do it in a short amount of time. But I think it's important for people to know it wasn't always like that you had to take some extra steps. You had to do things you don't have to today, and people worked very, very hard to get these things to happen. It didn't just someone sat down and said, I know I can make a cell phone, and I'll put one together in a few days, and we'll sell them, and you can all have them, and I'll communicate all the time. And, I'll put the internet on it too, so you have everything at your fingertips. It didn't happen in 48 hours. It took a lot of time and research and experimentation from very, very dedicated people to make it happen. As far as even radio, to get the first radios out, and television and movies. Today you stream your movies and all, but then it was quite a process years ago to put things on film, take photographs with film and get them
Mm.
developed and get them, people had to take those extra steps to go drop off the film, pick it up. It wasn't instantaneous, that you had to do other things. And sometimes you walked to school, and you did things differently then. So I think that's something that we've lost today. And I don't think it hurts anyone to try and learn about how things were for their parents or their relatives. And I do some genealogy. It's kind of for fun, but I think it's something that more people should do, to go back and see about your family and your roots and where you came from, and really who you are and what they were dedicated to eventually bring you into the world and give you all the things that you have. That it was a sacrifice for a lot of people, but they did it willingly.
Mm. So it's like you would hope that people would gain a better appreciation for the things we have and the labor that used to be associated with really just doing mundane tasks, which was such a grind back then. And now we push a button, or it just automatically happens. Right?
And you can work from home when not that I'm like, oh, back in my day I walked 5 miles to school, but when I was about 14, I started mowing lawns, for people. And I got like $5 or whatever, even I got that. But most of us did stuff. We had paper routes. And by the time you go into college, a lot of us had saved a decent amount of money to help pay for school. I know today it's astronomical. You couldn't possibly raise 50 or 60,000 for your college. But back then it was very common to do that, to have a job when you were 16, you could drive, then you could work at different places. And we did that. And it was kind of like, you didn't give it a second thought. It wasn't like, nah, I don't want to work. It was like, yeah, I need to, and you just did it, and you tried to save some money and do what you could. I know it's like the old guy and the old. Oh yeah, look at that old guy. He doesn't know Grandpa what he's talking about. But I think those things help build your character and build where it isn't just handed to you, where you can have all these things, and really never have to leave your house, and you can function. You can order your groceries. You can do whatever. I just think that it helps more to appreciate things that happen before you. I mean, but I applaud people today, and I'm not saying I disapprove. No, people have all these wonderful inventions they can do, and all these things to make life easier, and that's great. That's terrific. But I think there is other things that happen. I think it's important to know about how you got where you got. I guess I've said that over and over, but I'm a strong believer in that.
Yeah, for sure. Something you were talking about earlier kind of touched on something I've thought about before, and it's kind of these, I don't know, maybe like cultural touchstones. Like, so at one point you talked about film, right? We didn't have film, and then all of a sudden we could capture images, and then eventually we made moving pictures, right? Like movies and stuff like that, and then obviously like the recording of audio and being able to play that back, and then eventually we had radio, right, where you could literally hear somebody's voice from miles and miles away, which I'm sure was like mind blowing. And then, the advent of television, all of a sudden I had these moving pictures inside my house. That must have been so crazy. People like getting on airplanes for the first time. Because wasn't it like from the first manned flight to the time we went into space was like within a human generation or something, which is insane to think about. Like how rapidly that stuff is changing. And I was trying to think is like then there was like the advent of personal computers in your homes, and now I think my generation, because I'm in my 40s, so I think my generation's was probably the internet. Like the internet really was kind of this big cultural touchstone.
Oh, sure.
And it feels like we've run out. Like what else can they? I mean, there's not going to be another radio or TV where it just kind of magically pops in. It feels like nowadays it's just slight enhancements on the things we already have. It doesn't feel like there's going to be I'm not a futurist. I can't imagine what it would look like, but it's hard to it actually kind of makes me feel a little sad for like these big remarkable changes that happen, and the fact that we probably won't see another one of those in my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I don't see what the next big thing could be when we have all these mediums. How do you improve upon them? You can always make them a little bit better, but I can't imagine what would replace the internet or your iPhone or your iPad. That there's something that would be even more remarkable. Maybe there will be. As far as travel, we've gone a million miles in automobiles. How they've changed, and airplanes, and all kinds of things. I don't know how you can improve greatly upon those or come up with something new. I don't know. It probably won't happen. If there is, I probably won't see it. But yeah, you think we have what we have, and we're just that's where we're at. The excitement of new invention, really, they're. I don't know where that can come from, or where that can be with all the things that we have. How we can revolutionize something. And people would say in 30 years, you used to look at a computer, you looked at an iPad. I can't believe you did that. Maybe that'll be, but it's hard to imagine how you can replace on some of the things that we have and the technology we have today. I don't see how. I suppose would be like routine trips to the moon for everybody. You get in a spaceship in the morning, you come back 2 days later, and it's like no big deal. Maybe that'll be something that will be in the future, or Mars. I know some travel to Mars. I've read a lot of things about how they're looking to the feasibility of that. Maybe that will. But yeah, you're right. They're really technology is fantastic, and I just don't see how we can have some kind of like game-changing invention coming along now.
But yeah, that fascinates me to like look back at kind of those time periods and just like the excitement there must have been associated with that stuff. Like when you get your first TV or your first radio set, in your house, and the idea that a radio used to actually be like a piece of furniture. It was like a big thing that you would put in your house. It wasn't like we think about, like you were saying as a kid, you had a transistor radio. No, it was like, it was a piece of furniture. It was like a cabinet. Things were big.
Oh yeah, it was part of your living room. Yeah, you gather around the radio, and same thing with television. They were like huge consoles, but the screen was really small. But they were huge, and they weighed a ton. And when they got delivered, wherever they put it, it was never going to move because they weighed. That was it. And they were like very intricate. And there's some had record players on the top of them. RCA made some, so you could play records. There was a big speaker in there, and you would do that until in the 60s when speaker and hi-fi revolution came along, and FM radio. FM radio was a big invention when I was a teenager. That but there were no channels, and all of a sudden there's FM you can listen to, and you can get receivers for it, and there's rock and roll stations that don't have a commercial every 3 minutes. You can listen to like 10 minutes of music. That was quite a thing. Now FM radio, now you listen to Sirius FM, or you listen in your car, you listen to Apple or Amazon. But it was like when FM came, like, oh my gosh, we can listen to these rock and roll stations playing this really heavy music, and that was like, I can't believe this. This is just fantastic. But now it's run of the mill now. It's that everybody has. But I guess if I would say, like, my life, I could say that I lived through all these inventions. That was just marvelous to see all these things come to pass. A color television, one person on the street would have it, and if you were friendly with them, they'd let you come over for an hour. You could watch color TV. That was like, oh my gosh, I don't believe this. This is something. To have lived through that, I think is really cool to look back on and that. So I guess I can say, I guess I'm lucky in that sense, being born in the 50s and still alive today. The things that have transpired in all these years are just phenomenal. What we didn't have and what we have now. It was black and white. There was no color. The TVs and your clothes and the pictures you took, there was no color to them at all. And all of a sudden you get a color photograph and you can see your eyes and your hair color and the clothes you were wearing. It's like, whoa, this is unbelievable. And movies came out in color, and just it's just like such a phenomenon. So I guess I should say I'm grateful, really, for living in that time and living through these things. And growing up with the Beatles, I had to get that in there. That first got hooked on the Beatles, I was 9 years old. I was like, what is this? This is just for me. This is how it was hard to describe, but it's like this is life changing. This music is like nothing I've ever heard, and it's so cool and so exciting. And then it just went from there to all the other stars that came along, Dylan and all the others, and Clapton and all of them, and Jimi Hendrix, and just to see that you were there when they put out their first record, and you were able to rush home and listen to it. Today, on Sirius, you can hear Hendrix almost every hour, or anybody. You can hear all the bands. But back then, it was like someone's going to play. They're going to play Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin. Like, my gosh, I'm going to hear a song of theirs. It's like, wow. It was. I was very. I guess I should feel very, very fortunate for all that.
I think as humans, that's just the way we work. Is that once we get used to something, we just take it for granted, right? We just kind of don't think about it. Do you ever reflect on that stuff? Like, I know we are right now, but is that something that pops up? Because, like, I don't reflect on my childhood pre-internet. I don't ever like think about how much better it is now or worse for some people, depending on your outlook. But yeah,
I
I don't
think,
really think about that stuff.
I think it comes with age too. The older you get, the more nostalgic you get. I think you start looking back. And then like the high school reunions become a little more important when it's a 40 year or 50 year. You have it's something like, I want to see my old friends. I haven't seen them in 40, 50 years. I like to see them and try and catch up with them. I mean, there's so much to catch up with, people that you haven't seen that you're very close with. You hung out with every day, and you did things within your college friends. Like 30, 40 years later, it becomes a little, to me, it becomes more important to try to check back. And I guess you're kind of you're looking at your lost youth, and it comes more important to reconnect with people and talk. Remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? Oh yeah, I remember that, and find out how they're doing and talk about what's going on. Now, of course, we talk mostly about our health. Yeah, I had that surgery last year. It's kind of like something you never would have talked about 40 years ago, but that's a common topic. But I think as the older you get, you kind of look back more fondly to your earlier years, and you think about your youth and what it was like to run a mile. You think, now you can walk the block, you can walk a few blocks, but you could run or to circle the bases, or run 100 yards, pick up a football and run 100 yards down the field, what that was like, and tackling somebody even, or blocking a shot when playing basketball, or golf, hitting a drive 250 feet or something in the fairway. Like, you couldn't do any of those things today. But I think you look back and you get more fondly attached, I guess, to these things, and want to relive them. I suppose that you just can't. Your youth is gone, and I think so. The past becomes more valuable to you and more precious, I guess.
Mhm. I thought high school reunions were just so that you could see how much better you're doing than everybody else.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. It's like you want to go like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still walking around and all that. And I heard that this guy and this woman, they couldn't make it and all, but I did. Yeah, kind of like you want to one up people, I suppose. But another level to talk to them and
Yeah.
reminisce is a lot of fun. I am one of my best friends from my childhood. I hadn't seen him since college, and we reconnected. Last spring. So it was probably about 40 plus years, hadn't seen him or anything at all. Now we talk every week, and it's like great fun, like, yeah, we used to do all these things. And it seems it's to me something I look forward to talk to my old pals, my old buddies from all that time, and look forward to catching up and some of the things that we do. I think it's kind of fun. And but I guess I think it's an age thing. The older you get, you want to cling to your past, and keep it alive, and so you do, and you take a lot of time doing that.
Hmm. Well, we talked about you writing, but I know you also speak occasionally, and I was reading that August of last year, right? You got to speak at the Hall of Fame. What was that like? I'm assuming that was a milestone, right?
Oh, that was probably the highlight of my career. Yeah, I love Cooperstown. I've gone there 3 or 4 times. Back in the day, they didn't have the player files online, so you would go there to the library, and I spent a couple of days, looking at actual player folders, taking out the pieces of paper and making copies of those. So I had gone to the hall about 3 or 4 times, and I'd make sure I set aside at least 3, 4 hours in that day to go in and just walk through the hall and do that. So it's really a fun place to be. Love going there. And um, when my book Victory on Two Fronts came out, my publisher always sends them to the Hall of Fame. They have a speaker series, but I never got really any feedback. But last, I guess, March or April, I got an email from the education department at the hall that they wanted me to speak on Victory in Two Fronts. And I could have fallen out of my chair. I just couldn't believe I'm actually going to get to go there and speak. I can't think of anything better than that. It was just so exciting. I loved every second of it. Just being there and going up on the stage, and they video it and they stream it live, and speaking at that place, to me, which is, it's sacred ground to me, the Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, even though baseball didn't really come from there, as far as I know, but it seems to be the ideal place. And to walk those halls, to me, I'm like a kid. This is the greatest thing in the world, and to actually be a part of it and speak, it was thrilling, and I just had the greatest time of my life, I think, doing that. It was like, I can't compare anything else to that. I've spoken a lot of places with some large audiences, and I've been on live television and other things, and spoke to pretty large groups. But that was it. Walking up on that stage there and saying, I'm on the live library stage here at the Baseball Hall of Fame, where some of the great authors in the United States have spoken, and some of the most terrific people involved in baseball have been there. I was able to share the same stage when that meant a tremendous amount to me. That it showed me in some ways what I've done was worth it. What I've tried to contribute to the field, yes, I was definitely worth it. All the months and months and years of research and writing, and I think that made it all worth it. There, it was just a great moment that I still look back on, and still very, very pleased about the whole thing.
Well, perhaps the first of many. Speaking of games,
I don't know, but once I was glad to do it once, and I hope to go back again just as a tourist and spend a day in the hall and going through the shops and eating in some of the restaurants. They're it's an idyllic place. It's a slice of life, Americana. When you go there, it's hard to feel that way in just about any other place where it's just you're in a very special environment, and it's just really, really a great place.
To me, it feels like an actor who could say they've won an Oscar or won an Emmy, right? Or a chef that's won like a James Beard Award. It's like it's something you almost want to have on your headstone, right? It's like
it's
spoke at the Hall of Fame.
I spoke at the Hall of Fame. Yeah, kind of my headstone would be, but it's just a great honor to be recognized with so many other people that written just fabulous books, bestsellers, and newspaper reporters and ball players and other, to be able to be at the same place they were and to speak is really I can't think of anything that could top that. I really can't.
Does it make you feel more connected to baseball, to history, to all of it?
That I contributed something, that I think, that I did do something that people noticed and people have used and benefited from. That's something that'll always stick with me.
Does it feel like a legacy for you?
Yeah, it does. It really does. When I started writing, I didn't set out to say like, I'll culminate my writing career with speaking at the Hall of Fame, and it didn't enter my mind really, but that it happened. It's made me very, very proud, and milestone. My legacy. My great nephews and nieces in the years forward will tell their kids, your great uncle, he actually spoke at Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Or if they go there to visit, they'll say, your great uncle spoke right at this spot. He was here and he spoke to the people here, and his books are in the library here. So that's something that I'm pretty sure will be passed on, and very, very happy with that.
That's cool. You didn't secretly scratch your name on a post somewhere so you could tell everybody to go look for it?
I wanted to. I wanted to do it. Yeah, I really did. But of course I didn't. No, I just looked around, and some of my favorite things there's two lifelike statues of Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. They're all both about 6 feet tall, and they're just, I just love to look at those and say, like, they're about to come to life. Babe is about to speak, or Ted is going to say something about hitting it. It's just wonderful to stand there and to see all the people. There were kids of all ages there with their parents. There were families there. I think there were a couple of teams of like 10 and 12-year-olds that came on a bus and all went in there. And there were boys and girls and grandpas and grandpas. And it's just wonderful to see everybody there with smiles on their faces and reading and looking around and walking up and down the streets and having ice cream cones and eating popcorn. It just is just a great experience to be a part of that. That is just something that will always stick with me, and to my dying day, I'll probably think about our time at Cooperstown, and that I was able for a short time to actually be a part of the Hall of Fame and contribute there.
That's cool. Forever part of history. Forever have changed the way people look at various time periods and contribute to that. That's more than I can say at this point. So. That's pretty awesome.
You're still a young man. You've got a lot of years ahead of you.
I don't know. You say I'm young. Sometimes if I sneeze wrong, I won't be able to tie my shoes the next day. So it's creeping up on me. It's coming for me.
I know what that's like. Yeah.
I hear the pitter patter of footsteps behind me. It's coming. All right, Scott. Well, I tell you what, you have been so generous with your time. Right here towards the end, I usually ask my guest, is there any way that you would like people out on this crazy internet to interact with you, if you so choose. Do you want to social media, your website, your books? Is there anything specific you'd like people to go and check out?
Sure. My website is scottlongert.com. It tells about all my activities and all the books that I've written and what I'm working on now. You can leave me a message there, and I'll be happy to get back in touch with you. I love to talk baseball. Sometimes people just message me; they want to talk about something that happened in baseball. I'm happy to respond. I have finished a bio of Ray Chapman. That was something that was on the table for a long, long time. I wanted to write about Ray, and that is finished and is with my publisher, and got my fingers crossed that I can pass the next few hurdles and hopefully see the book in print at the end of next year, or maybe early 2024. But I think it's I think it's going to be a good book in the sense that everyone knows what happened to Ray in 1920, where he lost his life by a pitch ball. But his life was a lot more than that. He had a really terrific life, and he accomplished quite a bit. And that's what I wanted to get across in the book, that Ray was a complete person and was born and died in August of 1920. He had quite a life for a young man. He was destined for great things that unfortunately didn't happen. But I think it'll be a good addition to the baseball literature when hopefully it comes out next year. So I'm excited about that. But if anyone wants to get in touch, I'd be glad to talk at scottlongert.com.
All right, and it worked for me. I messaged you, and you came back, and here you are. So again, Scott, thank you for your time and your attention. And let me click stop on all these buttons real quick.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.